Good morning. Welcome to the home of Unitarian Universalism in Central Washington. My name is Rita Salama, and I serve on the worship team and the Board of Trustees, and I'll be your celebrant this morning. If you are a visitor this morning, we are so glad you are here. Here at Cascade UU Fellowship, we welcome you if you are single, married, divorced, gay, transgender, filthy rich, dirt poor, or no habla inglés. You are a crying newborn, skinny as a rail, or maybe could lose a few pounds. You are white, brown, black, red, purple, or rainbow hued. You can sing like Aretha Franklin or cannot carry a tune in a bucket. You're just browsing, just woke up, or you just got out of jail. You've been a UU your whole life, or haven't been in a church since your little niece's baptism years ago, or you got lost on YouTube and somehow ended up here by mistake. We welcome you if you have an AARP card and you have yet to grow up, or you're a teenager growing up too fast. You see the glass is half full, half empty, or you're wondering who drank the other half of your water. We welcome soccer moms, NASCAR dads, tree huggers, latte sippers, vegans, and junk food eaters. We welcome those who are in recovery or struggling with addiction. We welcome you if you're having problems, or if you're down in the dumps, or you're inexhaustibly joyful. If you don't like organized religion, this church is for you. We offer a special welcome to those who work too hard, those who don't work at all, can't spell, or have a bunch of letters after their names. We welcome all those who are ink-pierced or both. We welcome you if your ancestors arrived here on ships below the deck, and in chains, or if they captained those ships. We welcome you if you have been on this land since the beginning of time, arrived here before it was even a country, or just arrived last week. We offer a special welcome to those who could use a prayer right now, and really, couldn't we all use a prayer right now? We welcome immigrants, tourists, seekers, doubters, bleeding hearts, and you. Did I miss anybody? We're so glad you are all here. We especially welcome our guests that are here today who will be speaking during the forum about immigrant justice. And now Reverend Thomas has a few words of welcome.
Hoy es un día muy especial porque hoy tenemos dos idiomas presentes y activos. Today is a very special day. No. Gracias a mi amigo. It's not just a member of the congregation. So today's a special day because we have two languages active and present in the congregation. Especialmente quiero extender mi agradecimiento y bienvenida a Marta Velázquez. Marta, ¿dónde está? Es Marta. Oh, está aquí. Ella nos da el valiosísimo trabajo de traducción. She's giving us this gift of translation so that people from any background and any language ability can be active and present. That's an exciting difference than most of our days, and I'm pleased of that. I'm going to say thank you.
We invite everyone to join us for coffee and treats and conversation after the service, both in person or on Zoom. For folks on Zoom, you'll find the order of service in the chat. For everyone that's here in our building, let's turn around, look at the camera up above the exit sign, and wave to everybody on Zoom. And now please take a moment to greet those around you, especially. Today is a Share the Plate Sunday. That's when we give away the cash and the designated checks that are from our offertory, and you'll hear more about that later. There's a social justice forum after the social time today. Please plan to stay and find out more about the needs of immigrants in our community from our guest speakers. They'll be talking about what they're doing, and you can ask questions. Don't forget about the Spencer LaJoy concert this Thursday. Details are in the announcements. And now Kathy Lau has an announcement she'd like to make.
Good morning. I'm Kathy, and I'm Cuff's Chalice Lighter Ambassador. And I have two announcements. The first is for everyone who is a Chalice Lighter. The fall call is open until October 31st, so make your pledge before Halloween. The website and address should be on the screen. Is that right, Darius? Okay. And it's also listed in the weekly announcements, so you can click on things if you need that to get into the Cascadia website. The second announcement is for everyone who's thinking, what the heck is a Chalice Lighter? And the Chalice Lighter program is a way for UUs just like us to make small contributions that add up to big support to the Pacific Northwest congregations like ours, often between $15,000 and $20,000. In fact, last fall, Cuff was chosen as a recipient, and we received a grant for a new roof. So to become a Chalice Lighter, just go to cascadiauu.org and pledge to donate at least $20 for 3 calls a year, fall, winter, and spring. You can also donate $60 just once in the fall and be done with it. That's my favorite way. Congregations like ours apply to make a building improvement or apply for a smaller tech grant. At the end of the call, a check is for the total donated, less administrative costs, is sent to the congregation. And since 1995, almost $1 million has been given away by this fund. To qualify for a grant, at least 30% of our membership must be a Chalice Lighter. And at last count, Cuff was right on the edge at 30%. So we're excited to have new people join and increase our percentage. This will ensure that we are able to qualify for another grant when we're eligible in 2026. And plus we get to help our neighboring congregations do exciting things with their buildings. This particular fall, they didn't get any grant applications from congregations, and so they're going to use the money in a little bit different way. They're going to send the proceeds to the Hewitt Hopper Rabel Fund for Ministry. And that mouthful means they offer support to aspiring UU ministers who need to do an internship. It's a required thing. And that often will involve moving to a new community. So you may have different housing costs and anyway, this fund, they'll fund up to 50% of a year's internship. And it helps both the intern and the congregation that wants to be a learning site. So in 2023, this grant was awarded to an internship for the UU congregation of Willamette Falls. So happens right in our community. So in closing, please consider becoming a Chalice Lighter and supporting this worthy cause. Thank you.
And now we have an announcement from the auction team. So I have some people that will be joining me. I am a woman of many hats. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3. We're off to CUF's Land of Oz Goods and Services Auction.
Oh, if only I had a brain, I'd know what to donate.
That's okay. The auction team can help you even if you feel like your head is full of hay. We have lots of ideas. Once you decide what item or service you would like to donate, you can check the announcements for the link to the auction website and donate online, or see me after the service. You can also donate items that are homemade or handcrafted that would sell for $10 or less.
I need some courage. I'm afraid the Wicked Witch of the Northwest will be at the auction.
No wicked witches allowed. I promise you'll be safe. You can reserve your ticket for opening night on November 9th. The door donation is $8 per person. The auction team needs to know how many are attending so we can make plans. And scholarships are available so everyone can attend regardless of the circumstances.
If I only had a heart, I'd volunteer. Hey, I might not have a heart, but you do. The auction team could use your help. Volunteer.
See someone in a gold hat after the service to sign up. We're off to CUUF's Land of Oz Goods and Services Auction. This is the time in the service where we acknowledge where we are standing, where our building is. In this valley, we inhabit the land of the Pasquosa, the native people who have lived here for thousands of years before Europeans even knew this place existed. It's easy to forget that we are the immigrants and the colonizers of this land. The Pasquosa, or as they are otherwise known, the Wenatchee, spelled with an I instead of the two E's, still live here. You can imagine how difficult it would be to continue your traditions when your land has been invaded and taken from you. But the Pasquosa continue to do that as much as they are able. As Isabel Wilkerson says in her book, Cast, quote, many people may rightly say, I had nothing to do with how this all started. I have nothing to do with the sins of the past. My ancestors never attacked indigenous people, never owned slaves. And yes, not one of us was here when this house was built. Our immediate ancestors may have had nothing to do with it, but we are here, the current occupants of a property with stress cracks and bowed walls and fissures built into the foundation. We are the heirs to whatever's right or wrong with it. We did not erect the uneven pillars or joists, but they are ours to deal with now, unquote. At CUUF, we recognize the need to repair this structure. And although we don't know what we will be doing, we are committed to doing something. This year, we have set aside $10,000 in reparations funds. The money will be earning interest and is available to use once a committee is formed and we decide the best way to disperse those funds. And now I'm going to ask Reverend Thomas has opening words, so.
I invite you into the spirit of worship. These words. We come to this time and this place, guided by the spirit of love and hope and peace, to rediscover the wondrous gifts of free religious community, to renew our faith in the holiness, goodness, and beauty of life, to reaffirm the way of the open mind and the free heart, to rekindle the flame of memory and hope, and to reclaim the vision of an earth made fair with all her people one. So may it be.
This morning, I've asked for some help to light our chalice, so Linnea and August are going to come up. This is an opportunity to introduce them to everyone in the congregation if you don't know them. So Linnea was actually a member of our board a few years back, and this is her son, August. And we're all going to do the reading of the words together, and then August will light the chalice. All right. So in unison. When the great mosaic of humanity is treated with respect and dignity, when no person is threatened by hunger or war, when we have extended hospitality to the stranger and tended to the sick, when equity and justice reign everywhere, then we shall all be free. We light this flame to hold that moment in our spirit and in our minds until we can make them real. Thank you. Great job. Okay, now it's time for the story. I'm going to need some help with this story. There are parts that everybody can do with me and some individualized parts. So think about being in a volunteer spirit. Once upon a time, there was a friendly town called Welcoming Valley. Whenever someone new arrived, it was their tradition to all say together, "Welcome to Welcoming Valley." If you could do it with me and do the hand motions. Welcome to Welcoming Valley. One day, a weary traveler came to town. Who would like to be the weary traveler? Okay. Looking a little weary here, so here's a hat for you. A very stylish traveler. The traveler was dirty from her travels and looked different than everyone in the village, but this was Welcoming Valley, so everyone said, "Welcome to Welcoming Valley." She told them she had come from another country. They noticed that the stranger seemed to be tired and hungry. One of the townspeople said to her, "What do you need, friend? How can we help you?" And the traveler sighed and said, "I'm traveling to find my family, but I'm tired, I'm hungry, and I have nowhere to stay tonight." The townspeople thought for a moment, and then they all turned to each other and they said, "We know what to do." Let's say it together. "We know what to do." So they huddled, and then a little boy, I need somebody to be a little boy. Somebody want to be a little boy? Or a little girl? Somebody young at heart? You'll be, okay. All right. So the little boy had a loaf of bread, and he took it to the stranger, and he said, "Here, have some bread." The crowd called out together, "Bread for the traveler." Let's say it together. "Bread for the traveler." And then a kind woman came forward. Who would like to be a kind woman? There's lots of kind women here. Somebody volunteer. A kind woman came forward with a bowl, and she took it to the traveler and said, "Have some soup." And the crowd called out, "Soup for the traveler." Let's say it together. "Soup for the traveler." And then a kind teen came forward. Okay, who's the teenager who's a little bit rebellious here and has that teen spirit? Oh, yeah. Good choice. Typecast. Okay, so the kind teen took the warm blanket to the traveler and said, "This will keep you warm tonight." And the crowd called out together, "A warm blanket for the traveler. A warm blanket for the traveler." Finally, the town's oldest resident, is anybody here willing to be really the oldest resident? Oh, Elliot's coming forward. He put his arm around the stranger and said with a smile, I have a bed you can sleep in tonight." And the crowd all said in unison, "It's a single bed," just so you know. So the crowd all said in unison, "A bed for the traveler." The traveler's eyes filled with gratitude, and she said, "Thank you all from the bottom of my heart." The townspeople smiled and they said their special phrase, "Welcome to Welcoming Valley." That night, everyone gathered around the big fire, just like they did every night, where they told the same stories over and over. But on this night, the traveler, who was an especially gifted storyteller, joined them and told tales from her homeland, tales of incredible feats and magical creatures, and the people of Welcoming Valley listened with wonder. The next morning, before the traveler left, she looked around at the people in the town and said, "I will never forget the kindness that you showed me." And the townspeople called out, "You are always welcome in Welcoming Valley." Okay, and the traveler, you can put your things in there. Now, here is the interesting thing about the traveler. He was only with them, or she was only with them one night. They gave her something to eat, a warm blanket, and a bed to sleep in. But she gave them so much more. Every night, they remembered her stories that they had enjoyed so much, and they told them around their big fire and were grateful for this gift that she had given them. Thank you. Thank you for all of those who participated, which is all of you. So now I invite the people that are sitting along the aisle to stand and form an arch. And we have a couple of kids that are going to go through. So let's sing our words.
Now go with each other to find meaning in this. Part of the mission of this congregation is to create community, to care for one another and feel connected, and to give people a place to belong. To embody that caring ministry and community building part of our mission, we hold each week this time of honoring and remembering, a chance for each of us to speak of something that is of significance that has happened in our lives. We only share things that we've been given permission to share. Because there's a lot going on in this service, if you can keep it to 1 or 2 sentences, that's great. Sometimes we need to tell a little bit more of a story, which is also just fine. Each person who comes forward will say their name. I will give them the microphone, and then they can, after they've spoken, they can light a candle in honor of their remembrance, in honor of the things that have happened in their life of great significance. This next moment in worship we call centering. Long ago, I was told that for me, as a minister, as an ordained clergy, in order to do my work well, I had to become a non-anxious presence. To be present means to be here now. It means to see those around you and to affirm them. It means to connect with them and embrace them on their spiritual journey. To be present with reality as it is. To be connected to people, embrace individuals in difficulty and in joy. So I invite you now, in the spirit of silent prayer and silent meditation, to be here now, to take a breath and let it out and be aware that you are breathing, to affirm all those around you who are breathing here and now. Be with your breath. Let it be a reminder of the well-being that endures in your body no matter what. Be present with the ground of your spirit and the arc of love around you and the power of life within all living beings. But to be non-anxious means to remember our anxiety. To be anxious is to worry about how things might go wrong, how things might become worse. mentioned the election, and I know it creates all sorts of anxiety. So I invite you now to be present and non-anxious. That means you let your worry be. It's there, but set it to the side. To be non-anxious is to affirm the fear and the pain of life and let them go, let them be. You do not have to be afraid of pain. You do not have to identify with your fears. It's going to be there. But let your mind not identify with it. See what you fear, what we worry about as just little pieces of the whole, and ultimately weak compared to the great circle and power of life and community, true community. Here and now, together, remember that the sage hills will stand serenely about us no matter what happens. Remember that the Columbia River still flows with grace and power, bearing many seeds of life. Remember, the great sky will still turn golden and orange and pink at sunset and sunrise. And if you are one of those who know God, be grateful for God's peace. And if you are one of those who have thought deeply about life, be present with the wholeness of life. And now in silence together, let us silently pray or silently meditate for about a minute on being a non-anxious presence in the world. Today, I want to use the story of Rama and Sita to discuss immigration. Rama's story is a Hindu story from India. It is most famously told in the epic book, the Ramayana. And it's very much a part of a holiday, huge holiday, an important holiday from India that begins, this year happens to be on the 31st. Halloween, which here is Halloween. Before I do that, and before I tell you the story, what I want to do is tell you why that story matters to me at all and why I want to share it. Because there's not a lot of Hindus in this area. There's not a lot of people from India in this valley at this moment. But I'll tell you a little bit of why it's important to me, what it means to me. But before I do that, I want to remind you that in this valley, which has a big glowy cross on the hill, majority of people consider themselves Christians. And I want to say what tradition says, in the Christian tradition says about welcoming the stranger. For centuries, people have told stories of strangers who turned out to be Christ or angels disguised. There have been some religious leaders who have spoken about immigration in ways that are filled with fear or hatred or racism. We need to counter those. I want to counter those because both the Hebrew Bible and the Christian scriptures are clear and consistent when it comes to talking about how to treat the stranger. In narrative, in law, in prophecy, in poetry, in parable, the writings of the Bible consistently spell out that it is the responsibility of the faithful person, of the citizen, to ensure that the immigrant, the stranger, the refugee is respected and welcomed and cared for. It is what, in the Christian tradition, they would say, it is what God wants us to do. Jesus says several times, including his famous parable from Matthew 25. He said, telling a story, and he tells a story about a king who will say to those on his right, "Come, come, you who are blessed by my Father of the world, you are blessed. Listen, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. And I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. And I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me, and I was sick and you looked after me, and I was in prison and you came to visit me. Especially underline that line in terms of the people who are trying to claim that immigrants are criminals. And then the righteous will answer, Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you as a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes to clothe you? And when did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king replied, truly, I tell you, whatever you did for the least of these brothers and sisters, you did for me. And the Hebrew scripture of Leviticus puts it much more succinctly. When a stranger resides with you in your land, you shall not wrong him. The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as one of your citizens. You shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers once in the land of Egypt. And we, as Rita so aptly pointed out, all of us, most of us, are strangers and wanderers at some level or another. The overwhelming majority of us have come here seeking a new homeland, a better life, a new place on this good earth. So now I'm going to tell you why I wanted to talk about a Hindu story. I want to talk about the Hindu story before I knew that this was going to be a service on immigration. And I had to think about, well, so how does this connect? And the way it connects is where I got the story. When I lived and served in Muncie, Indiana, 2 members of my congregation were immigrants from New Delhi, India. Years before I ever knew them. As a young woman and a mother, the wife of the couple, he came as a mathematician to teach at the university. She was faced with a choice. Would she adopt all the women's fashions of this country, or would she continue to wear the saris of her homeland, as her mother and grandmother had taught her? One factor in her decision that made a huge difference was that she had met people from the Unitarian Universalist congregation. They were curious about her culture. They were interested in her religion. They accepted her as she was. Mrs. Gupta was also a strong and courageous person, and her husband was employed at the universities, which meant that she had support and she had status. And so she decided to wear a sari every day. For some people in that conservative part of the Midwest, Indiana, that marked her as a foreigner and an outsider, and she could see it and feel it. But she wanted to give a message that the loyal and local citizens of that city, the people who deserved to be there, who had struggled to be there, included many different people, including a woman who would wear saris. Over the next few decades, several hundred other people from India and other parts of South Asia immigrated to that town. Several hundred out of tens of thousands of people. They felt their difference. But she decided to form a social group of people around in the city. She called it the South Asian Muncie Association, or SAMA for short. And most of those people never came to worship at the Unitarian Universalist congregation, but they were essentially part of our congregation. They met there every month to support one another, to encourage one another, to celebrate their various cultural traditions and honor one another. But most of those people were not. Most of those people were Hindu, but some of them were Muslim. And then, when America got into a war in Afghanistan, fighting Afghanis, and people had to flee that country, those refugees of war who came to that city found a community to welcome and to embrace them. So I got to work with and personally know the goodness of people who lived out of Islam or out of the ancient Hindu tradition, of many different traditions. And all of that became part of who I am and how I understood the world better and more fully. I could hear stories from the strangers. They were all strangers to me because I just started the ministry there. learning the stories. I began to see the people and understand them. During my second or third year there, I accepted Shala's request, Shala Gupta, a request to set aside a worship service at the beginning of the holidays known as Diwali, to celebrate Diwali. And that became our habit for almost a decade. The word Diwali comes from the Sanskrit language. It's got one root is Deepa, meaning lights, and Avali, which means row. So the festival's name is about a row of lights. And the idea, for those who know the story of Rama, is that that row of lights is leading Rama back into the village, into their city, into their country, welcoming him from his journeys. But it's also just about light. It's also known as the Festival of Light. It's about the conquering of evil by love and goodness. Diwali is set according to a semi-lunar calendar, so every year it begins on a different week in America, but this year it begins on October 31st. Hindus interpret this festival in different ways, though. In North India, in the capital city is, they celebrate the return of Rama from his journeys, Rama and his wife Sita, and his brother, by the way. In the south of India, they talk much more about Lord Krishna's victory over a terrible demon. And in the West, it's Lord Vishnu's success. One of the things that Hinduism always taught me, which is very much a part of Unitarian Universalism, is there may be only one ultimate reality. There's only one source of goodness, and yet we have lots of different names and lots of different stories to invoke it, and that's a good thing. In India, some people celebrate the goddess, female deity, Lakshmi, the goddess of abundance, graciousness. But also the Sikhs and the Jains and the Buddhists, even some Muslims and Christians get involved in Diwali because it's this big festival of light as the world is getting darker. No matter what, the universal common theme of Diwali is the victory of good over evil. So the point I am making is that by welcoming a stranger, my congregation allowed me doors to new stories and new ways of invoking hope and new goodness. And one of those stories was the story of Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana. Rama, as I said, it's told in this huge epic. There's a million different stories. And every year, Shala would pick a different part of the scriptures, and she would read it to me, and then she would tell me what she'd been thinking about it, and then we would create a worship service out of that. The basic story, simplest way to tell the story, is that Rama is the son of King Dasharatha. He is, in fact, Rama, an avatar of Vishnu, God. As a young man, Rama does many great things, and then he marries the beautiful and virtuous Sita. And then the third wife of Rama's dad gets Dasharatha to agree to fulfill a wish for her. And after several years, in thinking about her new son, she's got a son, and her son is growing up a little bit, she wants him to have a chance to be the king. She's married to the king. Why can't her son have a chance to be king? And so she says, I have this, sister or husband, I have this wish I want you to fulfill. And what I want you to do is banish your own son from the country for 14 years. And of course, the king is then trapped because he has made a promise. And for the king to break a promise would be bring great shame and dishonor to him and to his nation. And he's very sad about this. But Rama sees his dad's dilemma, and he said, I would rather go into exile than cause you harm and shame. And so he goes out, and he starts walking. But his wife immediately says, no, we made some promises. I'm going with you. And of course, it's dangerous, we're leaving the country, who knows where we're going, who knows who we're going to meet. She goes, I'm going with you. And so he takes her. And then he has a brother, a younger brother, Lakshmana. And they, Lakshmana. And Lakshmana joins so the three of them are wandering, and they wander out into wilderness, into other countries, into foreign lands. There are so many immigrants in this world who are taken away from their home, from the place where they knew who they were and they knew how to be comfortable and had to travel. And sometimes the few people they can get to come with them are their only reminders of health and well-being and wholeness. Allow them to remain connected to their childhood and their past and to bring that with them in some way into the new lands. Sometimes family is the most vital part that anyone can have of their past, their childhood. Now, as Rama and Sita and Lakshmana wander, they try to be as helpful and good as they can. And I mention this because some so-called Christians in public speeches have lumped all immigrants together as rapists and lawbreakers. They have exaggerated stories or just made them up out of whole cloth, including, I'm sorry to say, one candidate for president. Rapists and lawbreakers, he says. As a religious person, I will claim this kind of speech as wrong and hurtful. We know that migrants are statistically less likely to commit crimes than US-born citizens. Stanford University economist Ron Abrahamsky found that since the 1960s, immigrants were 60% less likely, a few of them who do commit crimes, those who commit are 60% less likely to be incarcerated, just even brought into jail, than native-born US citizens. And undocumented immigrants are 37.1% less likely than native-born citizens to be convicted of any crime. During their adventures, trying to do good, trying to fight against evil that they see, trying to survive in strange lands and find people who welcome them kindly, eventually things go very wrong, and Sita, Rama's wife, is kidnapped by this Rakshasa demon known as Ravana. So Lakshmana and Rama, brothers, go to find Rama's wife. And on their way, they meet and they help and they befriend the king of the monkey kingdom and the great monkey warrior General Hanuman. I have met young men who are devotees, devoted to the honor and celebration of Hanuman, this monkey, because he's tough and he's brave and he's smart and he's committed to saving people who need to be saved and protecting the people who should be protected. Hanuman, an embodiment of some virtue and goodness that is divine and holy and found everywhere. And eventually, with the help of the monkey army and Hanuman's leadership, they defeat the evil demon Ravana. And they're reunited with Sita, and all three of the royals finally get to go the long journey, because they go all the way down to Sri Lanka, and they have to go all the way back up across the continent, back to their home in northern India. Not everyone goes home at the end. They're promised to return. In the story, it's a sense of return. But for many people, I've had to serve 9 different congregations. My career has suddenly took a turn in which, instead of doing 3 or 4, I've done 9. And I have had to travel from country to country and city to city, state to state, and city to city. It's been hard on my wife. Amy knows. Moving. Every time you move, there's little things that come up for me, things that I remember from a place that I lived before that are gone. Part of my mind is grieving that loss. It's not a place I can see anymore. And then when I go back, it's not the same. I can go to the same place, but it's not the same. So every immigrant understands this, experiences this, both this loss of the past and the way in which the present is always taking things away from us. All things are subject to change and ending, even the things we love the most. But sometimes, when you find a welcoming place, when you find the just and loving community that affirms you and strengthens you, not only are you less likely to get into trouble, but you may feel a second homecoming. You may find a second home. You may find that you are of two places. There's a wonderful little opinion column in the New York Times this last week by a guy named Carlos Lazara. Carlos talks about what he hears when he hears the anti-immigrant language in this country. And he shared a story about his mom, who brought him when he was a small child from Peru. And she would tell people, she would tell them right away, I am Peruvian. I am American, but I am Peruvian. And it was partially a way of saying she was still proud of who she was. And that was a lesson that his mother gave to Carlos. To be proud of who you are, of all of who you are, and be able to bear it into this world as a goodness. And then he said she also did it just to push off those people who are going to ask a bunch of weird questions. I'm from Peru, no habla español, right? She doesn't speak Spanish, she speaks Portuguese or Brazilian. She's not from Venezuela, not from El Salvador, not from Mexico, which most people assume. She wanted them to know who she was and to realize there are people of many different journeys that come to this country and become part of its strength and its wholeness and its well-being. We say, as Unitarian Universalists, we covenant to protect the earth and all beings from exploitation. We create and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect and mutuality and justice. We will work to repair harm and damaged relationships. And this congregation says we seek the truth, we embrace one another on our journeys, and we serve this world. So, whatever inspires you, whether it's Hindu stories or Christian stories, whether it is the Old Testament or the Quran, whether it is the stories of your grandmother or your ancestors, let those guide you and strengthen you. And now,
Thank you, choir. Well, today is a Share the Plate Sunday. I'm going to ask Kathy Bailey, who is on our social justice team, it was formerly known as the CCC team. She's going to come forward and introduce our speaker. And I know many of you will want to write a check or give a cash donation. So while you're listening, go ahead and look through your wallets and your purses or pockets for your checkbooks.
I'm not used to microphones, so I don't know. That's good. Okay. It's my pleasure to introduce Rachel Paskowski, who is a volunteer with Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice. She'll speak about some of the work that WIDJ is doing, and that's Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice is also known as WIDJ, supporting immigrants in our community. As a member of the coordinating committee, Rachel writes grants, she does bookkeeping, and is a community organizer in specializing in access to hospital charity care, deportation defense, and access to legal services. In her day job as a paralegal for Columbia Legal Services, she supported complex litigation around farm worker rights for 26 years. I hope you can also attend the forum following the service and coffee social, where a panel of speakers from WIDJ, Cafe, and Hand in Hand Immigration Services will discuss issues immigrants in our community face. more about what the work is that they do, and with a focus on how we can contribute to those, their work, highlighting volunteer opportunities. So welcome, Rachel. Come.
Thank you. I'm also not used to microphones. And I didn't go into politics or become an attorney because that mostly involves public speaking and asking people for money. So here I am. But we do truly thank you for the gift that you're giving to the immigrant community today. And I thank you for inviting me to talk to you. Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice was formed right around 2018 during the first Trump administration around the issue of access to the courts. And so at that time, Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the Border Patrol were picking up immigrants who were trying to access the courts as part of their daily lives. You get a ticket or you need to get a protective order, and people were getting picked up in the courthouse, which obviously is not great for our community, and it's particularly not great for the immigrant community. And so when a lot of people, this was before actually my time with WIDGE, but there were community members who were very concerned about this, and they got together and they got in touch with a group called the Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network, and they started accompanying people to the courthouse to document the activity that was going on there and to try to prevent people from being detained. In 2020, when the pandemic struck and the courts all closed, the same group of people looked at all the folks that they'd been in touch with and the community that they'd been allying themselves with, and they said, this is not great. All of these people are still going to work. They are frontline workers, and they are facing illness, and they're facing death while we all sit home. And if they become sick, they're also excluded from all the programs designed to help people who are out of work. And so they started raising money and helping people pay their rent when they couldn't work because they were ill with COVID, and helping with hospital bills, helping provide food for families that were in quarantine. And this was because the state systems, right, those social safety net systems had not caught up with the actual needs of the people living and working in our communities. So that brings us to about 2022, I think, when I started working with Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice, and most of the original people who had formed the group were moving on to other kinds of volunteer work. And there was sort of a new group of us coming in, and lucky enough to have Kathy joining us. And we started looking at some of the causes of what was happening, particularly with regards to medical debt, right? And so we decided that we would start, we wrote a grant and we got some money, and we started helping people apply for hospital charity care. As the pandemic has eased and people have really gone back to work, largely in the minds of our community, these needs of immigrants are not still there. But in fact, the factors that exclude our immigrant neighbors from the social safety net are still there. And in fact, we have an increasing number of immigrants coming in. We have folks coming in, asylees from Venezuela is a large group that's joining us. So those factors are still there. People still get sick, people still lose work, people still don't qualify for benefits that assist other people who are facing hardships. But the urgency that people felt to give during the pandemic has somewhat dissipated. And so during the pandemic, Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice raised and distributed around $250,000 in our community to keep people from becoming evicted and to keep people in their homes. And we no longer are raising that kind of money, partly because we also need more people on the ground. Our coordinating committee is down to about 6 folks, and we work really hard, but we have a lot going on, and we struggle to keep up with the needs of our partner organizations and the needs of the folks who call us. In addition to that, we've been asked by the Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network in anticipation of the possibility that this election may go in a way that's very bad for immigrants. to reignite our rapid response teams. And so right now we are still training, we're starting to train volunteers to do that work of responding to reports of immigration activity in the community, to make sure that if there are unfounded rumors, that information is communicated so that folks aren't living in fear. And also when immigration is active, to provide support for the families. And, you know, hopefully part of that work can be also helping folks if they need to prepare to make sure that their kids can be cared for by family members and not go into the system if they are detained, or actually if they face other problems, right? Those kinds of arrangements, power of attorney arrangements that you can make with family members are also good if you're in an accident or injured, right? Help people prepare for emergencies in their lives. So that's a little bit about what Wenatchee for Immigrant Justice is doing. And again, I thank you so much for your support, both the support financially that you're giving to the immigrant community today, and also hopefully for the volunteer support that some of you will feel moved to enter into. Thank you.
So if you are writing a check, please put WIJ or share the plate in the memo line, or you can put pledge if that's your intended destination. The designated checks and all the cash will go to support Wenatchee Immigrant Justice. So we will now collect the offertory. In service to the greater good in creating beloved community, let us joyfully share these gifts with this congregation and those who are in need in our community. Thank you. And now let us rise in body or spirit and sing our closing song.
Good song. Please remain standing before I light the chalice. As we're moving towards the end of this service, I want to add an apology. There's a moment where I went off script and I confused the country of Brazil with the country of Peru. They're totally different countries on different sides of the same continent. This is the kind of thing that immigrants have to deal with all the time. Even from a well-meaning, well-educated person who should have known better. We lit this chalice as a symbol of our gathering together, a symbol of the light and the feelings and the thoughts and the inspiration that guide us in life. We now will extinguish the chalice so that we can go and do well on this good earth. Please join with me in reading the extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and embody in our lives until we are together. It's part of the tradition of this congregation not to just go off to coffee, but first to try to form a circle as best we can and to sing a blessing to one another.
Carry the